Amsterdam, Lagos, Nairobi, Rio de Janeiro, Lima, and Managua.
This is WRMI, Okeechobee, Florida.
The commercial shortwave station in the USA.
Hello, everybody, wherever you may be, from coast to coast and sea to shining sea. I want to welcome you back to CQ Calling on WRMI and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Four corners of the world, wherever you may be, welcome to CQ Calling. Hello, everybody. My name is Larry. My call sign in ham radio is Kilo 7 Hotel November. A very Merry Christmas to you, wherever you may be. If you'd like to email the show, be part of the mailbag segment, we'd love to be able to include you. Reach out to me at cqhamradiolive@gmail.com. If you'd like to become a ham radio licensee, contact someone like the American Radio Relay League. You can find them online at www.arl.org. Hit the Contact Us part, let them know you'd like to be a ham, and they will send you a radio club near you. CQ Calling, powered by Icom, for the love of ham radio. It's heard worldwide. Hawaii, South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand have the show on Thursdays at 0815 UTC at 7730 kilohertz. Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East get the show Thursdays at 2015 UTC on 15770 kilohertz and Fridays at 2115 UTC at 7780 kilohertz. North America gets the show Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on 9395 kilohertz, and the Caribbean, Central and South America, Thursdays, 8:15 Eastern on 9955. And that show also is simulcast on the internet stream at www.wrmi.net. Your ham and shortwave forecast is brilliant for the coming week. You'll have voice pretty much north to south on 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10. That'll be fantastic. Everywhere, it'll be beautiful. We've got a lot of sunspots and great activity for the ham radio bands. Nighttime ham band openings, 160, 80, 75, 60, 40, 30. Your best DX in the north will be on 40 meters. Southern Hemisphere, best DX on 20 meters. Should last about 2 hours or so after sunset for you. Shortwave bands during the day, 31, 25, 22, and 19 meters. Shortwave nighttime bands should be 120, 90, 75, 60, 41, 31, 25, 22. And people in the Southern Hemisphere, you'll have a 100% chance of that 19-meter band going till just about 2 hours after sunset. Let's hear from Icom. Hear about what they have for you for under the tree this year. Happy holidays from Icom. This season, put Icom's just-released handheld, the ID52A, on your wish list. It's now shipping. The ID52A supports conventional FM communications and D-Star, simplex, repeater, regional, and worldwide calls over the D-Star Internet Gateway. The ID52A is the world's first handheld amateur radio with a full-color 2.3-inch waterfall display and the ability to send photos over D-Star with a connected Android device. It has a wideband receiver with a guaranteed range of 144 to 148 and 440 to 450 megahertz. It operates in DB, UU, VU, and has dual DV mode. It's an integrated GPS/GLONASS receiver, including grid square location, and it's IPX7 waterproof. Don't forget also the great family of Icom amateur radios available this holiday season, from the IC9700, the IC7300, and the IC7610 base stations to the ID5100A mobile. There's a perfect gift for you this season to get the gift of Icom. This Christmas show, we're going to be doing something I hope you enjoy. We're going to be talking about the history of shortwave radio. I really do hope you enjoy it. There were many radio pioneers who helped discover various parts of the radio spectrum. Shortwave itself due to the work of Gergo Marconi, but we'll get there during the show. The name shortwave originated during the beginning of radio in the early 20th century, when the radio spectrum was divided into three parts: long wave, medium wave, and shortwave. It was based on the length of the wave. Shortwave radio received its name because of its frequency spectrum. The shortwave spectrum is from 2,000 kilohertz to 30,000 kilohertz. Now, technically, from 2,000 to 2999 kilohertz is part of the medium wave band, but the part from 3,000 to 30,000 kilohertz is the high frequency portion. Shortwave gets both and makes the most out of each. As early as 1839, the German mathematician and physicist Carl Friedrich Gauss postulated that an electrically conducting region of the atmosphere could account for observed variations of Earth's magnetic field. That part of the atmosphere was later discovered to be the ionosphere. Back in 1886, Heinrich Hertz, a German physicist, applied Maxwell's theories to the production and reception of radio waves and how they worked by frequencies. This is why today we still use the word hertz when we describe what frequency we're listening on. The first wireless communication is credited to Pastor Roberto Landel de Moura. He was a priest in Sao Paulo, Brazil. De Moura created the world's first wireless transmitter back in 1892. A few patents later, including the wireless telephone in 1902, he had cemented his place in history as the first person to transmit a human voice, which he did over a distance of over 8 kilometers. The first transatlantic communication, well, that goes to licensed ham radio operator Paul Foreman Godley. He did it on December 2nd, 1901, in Androssen, Scotland. That was by Morse code. Giorgio Marconi, the pioneer of radio, probably had the biggest impact for shortwave, however. Prior to the 1920s, shortwave frequencies above 1,500 kilohertz were thought of as useless for long-distance communication and were just thrown to amateurs. But Giorgio Marconi was about to prove the other experts wrong. Marconi commissioned his assistant, Charles Samuel Franklin, to carry out a single-scale study into the transmission characteristics of shortwave link waves and determined their suitability for long-distance transmissions. Franklin rigged up a large antenna in the UK running on 25,000 watts of power. In June and July of 1923, wireless communications were completed during nights on 3,000 kilohertz from Poldo, UK to Marconi's yacht, Elettra, in the Cape Verde Islands off the west coast of Africa. Marconi did more tests and, after a while, figured out that those signals bounced up off the ionosphere, back down to Earth, and could do so multiple times to make long-distance communications possible. Samuel Franklin went on to refine the directional antenna to beam signals in a desired direction by inventing the curtain array aerial system, a system still used by shortwave broadcasters today. Speaking of shortwave, let's find out about the history of that right after we hear from Icom. Icom, for the love of ham radio. Hi friends, it's Larry. I'd like to talk with you about the brand new Icom ID52A. The ID52A is now shipping. It's Icom's newest handheld amateur radio, and it's a VHF-UHF dual bander with D-Star and FM dual mode functions. The ID52A supports conventional FM communications and D-Star simplex, repeater, regional, and worldwide calls over the D-Star Internet Gateway. The ID52A is the first handheld amateur radio with a full-color 2.3-inch waterfall display and the ability to send photos over D-Star with a connected Android device. It's also a wideband receiver with guaranteed range of 144 to 148 and 440 to 450 megahertz. It operates in DV, UU, DU, and dual DV mode, has a micro SD card slot, and is IPX7 waterproof. The ID52A, brand new from Icom. Find it at your local ham radio retailers and order now. Welcome back to a little history of shortwave radio. You know, the first shortwave broadcaster came from Holland. It was PCGG back then. It was known as the world's first shortwave broadcaster, which became Radio Netherlands International, the world's first shortwave broadcast station. The transmissions were located in Rotterdam and began on November 6, 1919. Another early station appeared in Canada when station XWA, now CFCF in Montreal, began transmitting experimentally back in 1919 and a regular schedule in 2020. Radio receiver manufacturers also began to grow by the late 20s worldwide. As the 1930s, 40s, and 50s would prove, the family radio, usually in the living room where everyone could listen, included the shortwave dial, allowing people to hear broadcasts from distant lands and learn more about world news and information. What about the meter bands on shortwave? You know, those began nearly 100 years ago. On October 10, 1924, the Third National Radio Conference made 3 shortwave bands available to U.S. amateurs, which also included shortwave broadcasters. They were 3750 kilohertz, 7,000 kilohertz, and 14,000 kilohertz. More frequencies have been allotted worldwide since, of course, but all of these new bands have shortwave stations within them, and some of them have amateur radio operators within them as well. Since amateur radio operators also have access to these frequencies, it's a practice for amateurs to never transmit near a shortwave signal. Shortwave signals are primary broadcasters, amateurs are secondary broadcasters. During World War II, shortwave was used as a propaganda tool where governments would read letters from prisoners of war to be broadcast toward countries they were at war with. After World War II, the Cold War began and the golden age of shortwave also began. There were literally hundreds of shortwave stations worldwide, transmitting news, information, music, and of course, propaganda. Many of the stations included Radio Moscow, the BBC, the Voice of America, the Voice of Free Europe, and Radio Berlin. After World War II, a new kind of signal also was heard on shortwave. It was called the jamming signal. Typically a very loud, repetitive noise with high power transmitted over the signal of another country's broadcast. The first known jamming signal came from Czechoslovakia in 1947 to block signals from the BBC and other free countries from reaching the people in the communist countries of Europe and Asia. Unfortunately, there still are jamming signals heard today emanating out of places like Cuba and North Korea. Beginning in the late 1980s, the amount of stations of the shortwave band had declined significantly due to the end of the Cold War. The propaganda war, of course, which drove the shortwave medium in the 1950s and 60s, and the emergence of the Internet. The big broadcasters are still around, such as WRMI, China Radio International, Radio Deutsche Welle, Radio France International, Radio Exterior d'Espagna, All India Radio, Voice of America, and the BBC are still on shortwave, but many just don't target North America anymore. Many government-owned services like Radio Canada International, the original shortwave broadcaster Radio Netherlands International, Channel Africa, Radio Portugal, the Voice of Russia, and Radio Australia made the tough decision to cease transmissions due to the high cost and concern of information that was over the Internet. But some still are out there. Some stations don't use shortwave transmitters in their own country, but they use overseas relays, including Radio Prague International, Radio Slovakia International, RAE Argentina to the World, Radio Tirana, and Radio Hobart. WRMI relays all of these services so that they can remain on the air to serve the world. There are many other relay stations around the world that help keep shortwave alive, allowing the news, music, and information from faraway lands to still be heard on shortwave. The future, it still looks bright for shortwave. Part of it's because less than half the world has reliable internet, and many people get their news and information from shortwave radio receivers. You know, shortwave has come a long way since Radio Netherlands first signed on the air. 2 world wars, a Cold War, and the emergence of the Internet have not been able to silence the power of shortwave. May it live on for many decades to come. The power of shortwave. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Folks, I'd like to thank you sincerely for spending this time with me, and I do want to wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas wherever you may be in this world. It is my honor and privilege to host this show. I'd like to remind you, if you'd like to be part of the email mailbag that we do, because that's part of Shortwave history, and we want to honor it. Email me at cqhamradiolive@gmail.com. That's cqhamradiolive@gmail.com. Remember, I have a YouTube channel called Ham Radio Live. On Christmas Eve, a special show at 20 UTC. Please watch for it. Also, live CQ calls on Christmas Day on 17 meters at about 18,130 kilohertz. Until we meet again, a very Merry Christmas, and God bless you. wherever you may be in this world. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Hello,
everybody.
this is Bob Zanotti in Bern, Switzerland.
Calling Bordeaux, Hamburg, Amsterdam, Lagos, Nairobi, Rio de Janeiro, Lima, and Managua.
This is WRMI, Okeechobee, Florida.
The commercial shortwave station in the USA.